to an extent.
Yeah. So YouTube's changing all of its structure. So this is all like, so this is that like 2015, 2016 to now transition as hardware is becoming more available, more affordable. The business model is becoming more financially viable on YouTube. You know, a whole bunch of us who were at the time, you know, like I was effectively still just a hobbyist at this in 2015, 2016. Like I was taking it seriously.
Right.
And I was like I was trying to better myself. I was trying to better my content. I was trying to like write better stuff. Like I was treating it as like a business, but I was like, I was working at a loss. I was not making, you know, profit.
You weren't on that the YouTube money train just yet.
No, yeah, not at all.
Were you still working? Are you still working a real job or
no longer? But that's only changed like very recently.
Oh wow,
sort of. So then the Suicide Squad video comes out, and that's kind of like the first real like change point for me, because that's when the channel didn't become like a full-time job viable, but it became like it started actually paying, like instead of getting a payout. Actually, yeah, I only qualified. So in the years before, like here's the real dirt. In the years before, so from when I went back to YouTube to Suicide Squad coming out, I qualified for and never and actually didn't receive, because it kind of wasn't even worth the trouble of jumping through the hoops, one payout.
Wow.
So that was over the course of like that year, 3 years.
Between coming on from Blip to Suicide Squad, basically?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I don't know, what was money even like a couple of years ago? Like now, like I started in summer of 2020 to keep from going crazy.
Yeah.
I got my first little check in July, but by then I had also hit 100,000 subscribers by August.
Right.
And was like, oh, I'm going to quit my job at the end of the year if I can keep this up. You know?
Yeah. So for me, Suicide Squad took me from 10K subs to 100K subs.
Wow, that's crazy. Was I watching you at that small? That's why it's just in my head, because you've been here. You're an OG. You know.
Yeah, I've been doing this all in all since 2011.
Yeah.
Blip actually paid okay. You know, Blip
right.
Okay.
So
I was making about.
Yeah, this is surprising to hear, but go ahead though.
Yeah. So Suicide Squad video comes out, and that was the one that started making me think that it's like, okay, like, should this be the point where I like, because after I got back, I worked I worked at a hospital for a couple of years, so I had a day job, and then some asshole in the government embezzled out like $150 million, or like, was it $250 million out of the Alberta Health Services budget. And so the big old round of austerity and layoffs, and turns out that the diagnostic imaging department can't justify having their own graphic designer on staff if you got to be trimming support jobs. So my union CUPE did a really good job of like offering me a couple replacements, but the replacement that they gave me, which was interesting and fun, but it was working in like supply chain management, which is actually what I had done kind of between high school and college. Was I had worked in warehouses. So I was like, I'm actually like pretty qualified for this job.
You're essentially hustling, not hustling, but like you're grinding at the, you know, just keeping bills paid.
Yeah. And so I did the hospital job. Like the union offered me this other position, and I did it for, you know, so there's like, you know, you can try, you know, here's your options. You can try this job out. Like if you want it, like it's within your grade and blah, 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 blah. And they were really good to me about that. And I tried it for a few weeks, and between like the schedule and the duties, I was like, I had this sort of realization that it's like, all right, if I stick with this for like if I think in my head that it's like, okay, just gonna do it for 2 years until I've got like a little bit of savings, it's like you're not gonna do this for 2 years. Like you're not gonna do this for just 2 years. Like this is a real job. Like
Right.
this is like even more so than the position that I had just left as a graphic designer. Like this is a job. You're getting up at like a fixed time. You've got like if you stick with this, this is kind of gonna be it. Like you're gonna exit doing media. You're not gonna have time to do to do film shoots. You're not gonna have time or energy to do contract work on the side. You're probably honestly not going to have time to do your YouTube videos because the schedule is going to be too demanding. And so I took this long, hard look inside myself and was like, well, I'm not necessarily young, but I'm not that precarious. This is kind of like my chance to, if you're going to do media, like you got to kind of pull the trigger on that. So I did, so I was like a film contractor for years. So I'm doing YouTube at the same time as I'm doing contract work. So I'm looking for like union gigs on like shows. I'm doing indie features. This is when I started like moving into like post-production a little bit because I got offered a job as like a DIT. And so that actually wound up becoming my like on-set job, was like doing digital imaging technician, or like data integrity technician, also data management technician, DM. So DIT and DMT were my two different job titles that I would do, and I would do about like 2-3 features a year, maybe a series, a bunch of corporate work. We made training videos for restaurants, and all this stuff. And so I like had like the hustle and grind, self-employed contractor thing going on. And then I was using YouTube as a thing in between to like flatter my ego, keep my skills sharp, and just like keep myself engaged and interested.
Yeah, it feeds. So I had a similar, I think relatively similar in the last couple of years, is how I am here. I'm in a PhD program still technically. I was working a job at a major university that paid for me to continue my PhD, but I was very much just doing it because it was free there. And a PhD for my field, because I was in public health, social services, adjacent. And I have 2 sons, and my wife had been the primary breadwinner, because I came from like education. I was teaching and then doing social work, and then finally I started
fields notoriously well-paying fields. Social work and education.
It was very very fulfilling work, except for monetarily. And it's funny because my wife was in corporate America. When we met, I was teaching and she was still in school, and then that like monetary thing flipped really quickly. But the kids were still young, and she was letting me know like, hey, like I would like to like pull back from the type of work I'm doing, because it's very demanding. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm halfway done with this PhD. I've been at this particular place long enough where I can have my next job be the job, Similarly, like this is the job that makes your career. And I'm Dr. Signifier, and I get to, whatever. But I'd always dabbled in media and always said, always been a diet creative is what I say, a great value creative.
Right.
And just that I'm creative, but I have no sharpened skills. I'm still learning a lot of the things, in terms of like the production side. But I knew I could write, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm applying for, big level jobs within social services, social outreach, community health type field. And then I drop, a video on Hamilton. You know what I'm saying? And like literally, I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching my stuff, I'm like, I'm pretty good. I wonder if I could really do this. And so I basically said I'd give myself to the end of the year to like make it a thing. And I got to the middle of the following year.
Not a bad timeline. Like, honestly, not a bad timeline.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's easier based on like now, like you came into the new algorithm, whereas I got to watch it evolve.
Yeah.
So, and then like I was serious. Like no shade to the young people in the chat and in my fan base. But like this is, we talked about us being both getting ready to turn 40 this year.
Yeah.
This is a young person's game, but being older and having having real work experience.
Having a I used to talk about this a lot on so when this was kind of the weird thing is when I was participating on That Guy with the Glasses forums, like I'm in my late 20s at the time, and most of the people that I was like chatting with and giving advice to were 19 or younger.
Right.
Like a lot of them were 15, 16. And being able to tell people that it's like, okay, like you need some willingness, like you need some willingness to be realistic about what you're doing in terms of like what are your goals and aims out of it. Right. Because if you're willing to just go all in on like, look, this is a hobby and a thing that I do because I enjoy it, then like, and you're honest about that, then that's extremely freeing. Yes. Because like now you're not really worried about like, you're not really worried about performance, like obviously you always want to like succeed, but like if your principal goal is self-expression, then that's freeing. Versus if you're like, well, no, I do want to make it a career. It's like, okay, well now you need to like, you need to start doing some weighing in your brain, because like you don't need to make you don't need to make mercenary decisions, but right. You need to consider mercenary questions. Right. You need to look at something like, okay, do I want to go the React world line of things? Do I want to be Fine Brothers? Do I want to do the CinemaSins thing where it's like, I'm just going to throw spaghetti at the wall. I'm going to try 20 different formats. I'm gonna just try to like Mr. Beast hack the algorithm, right? And figure out like and just like grind against the algorithm until I figure out what works, because success is what matters to me. Are you gonna do that route? And you essentially need to like you need to address that question of like, okay, what degree of optimization am I willing to engage in? Yeah. And the answer might be, and for a lot of people, like, I mean, because the things have gotten broad enough, like there's the ecosystem is healthy enough that it can support a lot of different things. The answer doesn't have to be like Fine Brothers level of like, right. Algorithmic focus. It doesn't need to be Mr. Beast level of like, okay, laser targeting, like, okay, we're going to have 10 different thumbnails at the ready, and we're going to A/B test them on a rotating basis, like in 15-minute intervals for the first 3 hours that the video's up, in order to figure out, like, and we're sitting there watching the graphs, like, okay, change the thumbnail. What's going on? All right, what's the percent over versus right. like last? It's like, oh, no, the percent, like it's only going up 3%. That's what we're expecting on normal. Change it. Okay, all right, now we're at 8. Now we're at 8%. That's 2% above baseline. Got it. There's the thumbnail.
In the chat, if you think Dan is exaggerating, only a little,
only a tiny bit, only a tiny bit.
The science, because like people wonder, like, I try to be humble, but I have an ego, and I know I'm really good at certain things within this space. But I know I wouldn't have broken through the algorithm, especially as a Black creator making greatly Black oriented content. It's several things that have happened that have been out of my control. Yeah. But one thing I did control was, one, being talented, and two, I sat down with these people and said, okay, and watched my Mr. Beast's career breakdown videos, and tried different things and changed thumbnails, because as I talk to these people in Nebula, etc., I'm like, okay, there is a science and logic to this. And I have to feed, I have to. Yeah, it's either this.
You have to engage with it.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I have to pay for healthcare out of this, or thankfully not, because my wife can, because there's no healthcare on YouTube. But you get my point. Like, and so that's different than a 20-year-old that turns on the camera and just, you know, riffs. I talked to Cole Pesh, the Yardstick. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff. He's much smaller, but he did a video breaking down one meme that's still, like, no shade to NFTs. It's probably my best video of the year, my favorite video of the year. And he's like 24. And he's like a former theater kid. And so, like, for him, this is a creative outlet. And I almost don't want to. I feel guilty because I do a lot of you use this word in the NFT video, and I've been trying to say it for a week now. Evangelizing about working YouTube in that, like, quasi mercenary framework, especially for marginalized creators who have to use some of those tricks to break through. But I also don't want to take away those young people doing young people shit in front of a camera, you know?
Yeah. So to kind of go back to, like, it's like, what do we as kind of, like, you know, just elder millennials kind of bring to it is just that little bit of experience with, like, jobs and the realities of, like, growing up, where it's like, you know what, it's like you can make a business decision about your creative endeavors without that being selling out.